Brand new season, brand new dawn for
Box.
and it's lights out and away we go.
Simply lovely. I was really enjoying that last in.
Welcome back to Box. This is yet another catch-up episode where I am catching up on all the episodes that I forgot to record this season. This week, we are talking the final race of the triple header, Brazil. It's also our final sprint weekend of the year. And I think it's safe to say it did not disappoint. From wild weather and qualifying to a formation lap retirement and a very nasty lap 1 crash. The Brazilian Grand Prix provided it all. Now let's talk sprint races, shall we? They've been a hot topic of late, with many drivers sharing their varying opinions on them. Charles and Valtteri expressed their fondness of sprint weekends, advocating for them on the basis that free practice can become boring, even for them as drivers, and understandably for us as fans. And they prefer the one practice setup. However, they did suggest that Grand Prix qualifying be moved to a Saturday afternoon rather than the Friday due to the Parc Fermé regulations. And I think we know why Charles has that opinion. Others, however, including Max, Lando and Danny, all expressed to varying degrees their preference for a regular race weekend, with 3 practice sessions before qualifying, stating that sprints are only for the fans and that they don't really get much out of it. So, to sum it up, the press conference about the sprints in the third last race weekend of the season and the final sprint weekend of the season were rather mixed. Shocker. But I think the real question is, why did F1 and the FIA leave the bulk of the sprint races for the period between summer break and the end of the season? The period in the calendar with 3 less races than before summer break. Why cram 3 sprints into 10 race weeks and only 2 across 13 race weeks, making the push towards the end of the season ever so much more gruesome on drivers, teams, and the cars? I mean, we saw the potential toll this can have on the cars this week in Brazil when Charles' hydraulics failed on the formation lap, causing him to lose power steering and sending him into the barriers and out of the race. I mean, yeah, part of that is a Ferrari reliability issue, given 2 other cars with the same power unit retired from that race as well. But given that they have had to endure 3 extra qualifying sessions and 3 additional races at a time in the season where wear and tear on the car is likely going to be at its highest, why are we surprised that some teams are struggling and cars are failing and drivers aren't enjoying it? Anyway, just a thought. Moving on. Let's break down by team, shall we? As usual, Max and Red Bull dominated. And for the first time in a while, Perez found some form. He managed to join Max on the sprint podium, taking home 3rd position behind McLaren's Lando Norris. He also managed to back up his performance in Sunday's Grand Prix, missing out on yet another podium by only 0.053 of a second to Fernando Alonso. And that is a story unto in itself. His qualifying for the Grand Prix was less than desirable though. Yes, he made it to Q3, but how is he only getting the rocket ship that is that Red Bull to P9? I mean, he says he doesn't know where the rumours of him being replaced are coming from or why they're even coming up. But this is why. And I really can't say I blame Red Bull for having concerns. The car is seconds quicker than their closest competitor, and he can't even get it to P2. Combine this with his less than consistent performances this year. I genuinely don't know why he's surprised. I think if he wants to cement himself at Red Bull for 2024, he needs 2 of the most consistent performances in his life to end the season, and bring back the guy who was in championship contention at the beginning of the year. Because let's not forget, there was a time where he was on level points with Max, but he couldn't cop the pressure. So if he wants to keep his seat, he needs to bring back that guy. Mercedes. Now, despite the fact that they are now second in the constructors, ahead of Ferrari by 20 points, the car still sucks. A lot. Particularly with consistency. Some weeks they're flying and others they barely crack the top 10. And this week was one of those weeks. Both drivers managed average qualifying results for the Grand Prix and the sprint, but it's their race pace that is letting them down. I mean, even Toto has come out and said that the W14 doesn't deserve a win. I mean, despite Lewis getting awfully close to his first win since 2021, just a few weeks ago. But since then, their form has fallen off a cliff, especially considering George was forced to retire due to issues with his power unit and the possibility of it almost exploding due to the overheating that it experienced. So fun times over in the Mercedes garage. Ferrari. This weekend was an absolute roller coaster for Charles. He came out of the gates and qualified P2. Put himself on the front row, out qualifying Carlos, who was in P8. So many positive signs, so many things to look forward to. And then the sprint shootout saw both cars through to SQ3. Charles in P7, Carlos in P9. Both managed to score points in the sprint and make up some places, with Carlos finishing the race in P8 and Charles in P5. There were so many positive signs. And then Sunday happened. And Charles crashed out before the race even started. And Carlos made up 2 places, finishing in P6. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. It's just... There was so much potential this weekend, but once again, their reliability let them down. And they had yet another disappointing weekend. McLaren. What a weekend for the boys in Papaya. And again, it was a little bit of a roller coaster. Qualifying saw both boys through to Q3, with Lando in P7 and OP in P10. And promising signs for the Grand Prix. Sprint qualifying saw Lando on pole, and almost my death, when I forgot how to breathe in that moment. OP also did well, getting through to SQ3 and qualifying in P10, creating a top 10 papaya sandwich, if you will. Great effort from Oscar, considering this is yet another track where he hasn't actually been. The sprint race saw Landini finish in P2 because Max yet again ruins everything that is wholesome and good in the world. And OP maintained his P10. So overall not bad, but only points for the man on the podium on this one. Sunday, again, was a bit mixed. Starting further back on the grid was very detrimental for Oscar's race because he sustained damage from debris in that awful lap 1 crash, which completely and utterly ruined his race, having to box and almost retire because of damage to his rear wing, and then the red flag, and then him being out, and so he was perpetually a lap down. So he finished the weekend in P14. Lando's race was a little better, given that he gained 5 places thanks to that lap 1 accident, and once again finished on the podium in P2. But my favourite bit was the fact that he was fighting with Max for P1 for a few laps there. And I once again almost died because I forgot how to breathe for a concerning amount of time, holding my breath, hoping and praying that he would get the move done. But anyway, he didn't. He got P2, and I am, as a Papaya fan, still ecstatic about that. Anyway, moving on. Aston Martin. This was probably their best qualifying of the season. Lance outqualified Fernando for a P3 start and a P4 start, respectively. Like, I'm sorry, where did that come from? Did the rain factor into that result by preventing others from getting in their final laps? Yes, but the quali strategy to get them in that position by getting the cars out early to allow them to get their laps in was great. So well deserved there. And then we were back to our regularly scheduled programming for the sprint race, though, with Fernando outqualifying Lance in P15 and P17, respectively. The sprint race itself was better, but not great. Improvements were made, but no points were scored. Fernando made up 4 places to finish P11, while Lance made up 5 to finish in P12. But Sunday was a great points haul for the boys in green. Despite Lance losing his P3 early on, Fernando also managed to come in with his first podium since Zandvoort in P3, while Lance managed P5. So big improvements from Saturday. Big improvements from Saturday to Sunday. Alpine, a mid-weekend for a mid-ranked team. Both drivers made it to Q2, with Ocon out-qualifying Pierre in P12 and P13 respectively. Roles reversed in the sprint shootout, where Ocon failed to get out of SQ1, managing P16, while Pierre managed SQ2 and P13. The sprint race itself didn't really produce anything decent from the French duo either. Pierre failed to improve and finished in P13, while Esteban made up 2 places for a P14 finish. So nothing really to write home about there. Both drivers did manage to score points on Sunday though, so that's something. Pierre managed to one-up his teammate and came good to finish 3 places in front of Esteban for a P7 and P10 finish respectively. And at the end of the day, points are points. Williams. Unfortunately, a standard weekend for the British team. Logan failed to get out of Q1 and qualified in P19, while Alex got through to Q2 and qualified P15. The sprint shootout, unfortunately, was not much better, with both drivers lining up on the back of the grid for P19 for Alex and a P20 for Logan. Logan didn't manage to improve and finished the sprint where he started, in P20, while Alex made up 4 places to finish in P15 and no points for the team. And then the race most certainly didn't go how either Alex or the team envisioned it when he came together with K-Mag shortly after lights out and didn't make it to turn 1 of lap 1. But thankfully, he was okay. Logan did capitalise on the carnage of his teammate though and made up 9 places for a P11 finish, narrowly missing out on a points finish for the second time in his career. But hey, he did what his teammate couldn't do this weekend and he finished the race. He may not have been able to out-qualify his teammate, but he did finish in front of him, technically. AlphaTauri. It was a tough quali for AlphaTauri boys this weekend, neither managing to get out of Q1. DR was out-qualified by Yuki in P16 and P17, respectively, but both came good in sprint shootout and made it through to SQ3. Yuki again out-qualifying Danny Rick in P6 and P8, respectively, but overall, not a bad performance from the duo. The sprint race did see Danny fall out of the points by 1 place, finishing in P9, while Yuki scored some much-needed points for the team, finishing the sprint in P6. Improvements were made on Sunday as well, with Yuki scoring points yet again, finishing the race in P9. Danny Rick did make up some ground as well, missing out on the points but finishing in P13 after a 4-place gain. So, improvements were had. Not as great as last week, but still not bad. I mean, it's got to be tough for the man to come back and have 2 sprint races in 3 weeks, especially after being off for the majority of the season. So, anyway, Alfa Romeo. One of the worst qualifying sessions of the season for this driver pairing, with neither making it out of Q1. Valtteri managed P18, while Zhou failed to get off the bottom of the grid and qualified P20. I mean, he may as well have not just gone out. Saved the car the stress. There was a slight improvement in the sprint shootout though, with Valtteri qualifying P14, but once again, Zhou failed to make it out of the first session, qualifying P18. And then they were back to their regularly scheduled performances in the sprint race, Valtteri losing 5 places to finish in P19, while Zhou only made up 1 place to finish in P17. Whoopee. I'd like to say that things improved for the team on race day, but alas they did not, and neither of them actually managed to finish the race. So yeah, not a great weekend for Alfa Romeo at all. Haas. Look, both drivers made it to Q2, Hulk qualifying P11 and K-Mag P14. A significant improvement in some of their other qualifying performances this season. They managed to keep managed to keep up this streak in the sprint shootout, with K-Mag out-qualifying Hulk in P11 and P12 respectively. Come to the sprint race itself though, both drivers went backwards. Hulk finishing in P18 and K-Mag in P16. So yeah. And then Sunday saw some mixed results, given K-Mag was involved in that lap 1 collision with Alex Albon, meaning that he didn't finish the race. He barely started it, considering they didn't make it to turn 1. But Hulk managed to avoid the carnage and finished the race in P12. And yet another weekend goes by where the team haven't scored a single point. So, make of that what you will. It's been a rough season for the bottom few teams. But anyway, this has been another episode of BoxBox. Thank you so much for listening or watching wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, all those fun things, and I will see you in the next one.